It rarely snows in the city, and after lunch, I was wandering around the hospital with a few colleagues when I ran into Jocelyn, who was taking pictures of the snow scene. Back in school, she was known as the cold beauty of the medical school, her personality colder than her surgical scalpel, and she had never smiled. She was the goddess of many seniors and juniors. A male colleague called out Jocelyn's name and handed her a coffee to warm her hands. Jocelyn turned around calmly, her snow-white skin seemed to be coated with a thin layer of frost under the sunlight. Everyone wanted to take a group photo under the tree, so I took out my phone to play the photographer, bending down to find the right angle and distance, my fingers counting down. Just as the countdown reached the last second, a gust of wind swept past my ear, and my boyfriend Alexander appeared out of nowhere, laughing as he lifted me up and executed a powerful shoulder throw. I sank into the snow, and the tree trunk buried beneath the snow trembled gently as I collided with it, snowflakes fluttering down from the branches, beautiful as a fairyland. Jocelyn smiled unexpectedly, stunning everyone. Why is he treating me like this? Is he deliberately making me look foolish just to see Jocelyn smile? What did I do wrong? My mind went completely blank for a few seconds. As the feelings of grievance and anger surged within me, I realized that my entire right shoulder was numb, and my right hand had completely lost sensation. All I could manage to say was a choked whisper, "Help me." "Wow, senior, this photo of you is so beautiful. I've known you for 7 years, and it's the first time I've seen you smile." Alexander picked up my phone and proudly shared the photos with everyone. "Oh my, Jocelyn really should smile more, she's so beautiful." "Alexander, quickly help your girlfriend up, how can she be like this?" Alexander laughed and said it was fine, squatting down in the snow to tease me. "Evelyn is a funny blogger, she's fine." Suddenly confronted with my dull, lifeless eyes, Alexander's words came to an abrupt halt. Seeing my severely twisted right arm, Alexander panicked. "I'm sorry, Evelyn, I was just joking." My right shoulder was pierced by a tree root and bled profusely. I was pushed into the emergency room. The director and the deputy dean had just finished work. Upon seeing me, their expressions changed drastically, and they hurried in one after the other to perform the rescue. Alexander tightly held my hand, his eyes reddening, as he repeatedly wiped the snowflakes off my face, trembling with panic. He was blocked outside the emergency room, and in the last second before the door closed, I calmly said one word to him, "Get out." When I woke up, Jocelyn was asking the nurse about the medication from last night. The room was filled with a fragrant aroma, and the cold, crisp scent of cedarwood essential oil on her even overpowered the smell of disinfectant. My pillow has Jocelyn's phone on it, the screen still lit. She posted that snowy landscape photo on Facebook. Alexander was the first to like and comment, "Senior, you really should smile more, you look beautiful when you smile." I was stunned for a few seconds. My gaze fell again on the medical record next to the phone. I don't know if it was carelessness or intentional, but my medical record was casually tossed there by Jocelyn. I am also a surgeon, I can understand the content. My right hand can no longer hold a scalpel. The sound of turning pages was particularly clear. Jocelyn glanced back at me, coldly snatched the medical records, and said nothing. Although we are both from the same school and have become colleagues, our friendship is not deep. Jocelyn rarely interacts with men and completely ignores women. We have nothing to say to each other. Has Evelyn woken up? I'm sorry. Alexander's voice broke the silence of the ward. He had just spent the whole night performing surgery on a patient, sweat glistening on his handsome face, his tall frame carefully leaning over to the bedside, holding my hand through the blanket. I just wanted to make a joke with you at that time. I'm sorry, Evelyn. Your parents have already been informed, don't worry, you only have a fracture. In a few days, you'll have a minor surgery, the chief surgeon will operate, and I'll be there, your right hand will definitely recover. The tremor in Alexander's voice was like that of a helpless child, as he lowered his head and repeatedly stroked my fingers. Seeing that I was silent, he forced a stiff smile, trembling as he took out a velvet box from his pocket. Actually, yesterday, I wanted to propose to you. Jocelyn left at some unknown time. Alexander looked at me with burning eyes, full of deep affection. It has never snowed so beautifully in City A, and I just wanted to propose to you in this heavy snow. First, I made you angry and then brought out the surprise. You know, that's how it is online. I really just wanted to joke with you. It's my fault, I'm stupid, I promise there won't be a next time. But the box contained a very ordinary ring, showing no signs of careful preparation. Alexander took my unresponsive right hand. Will you marry me, Evelyn? The air was terrifyingly quiet, as if I could hear the sound of the medicine dripping drop by drop into the floor. Suddenly, I laughed. Alexander immediately breathed a sigh of relief, pressing his cheek against my palm like a spoiled little dog seeking affection. I grabbed his hair with my still strong left hand, my gaze cold. At a time like this, you're still thinking about proposing? You should go to the police station to file a report first. You intentionally harmed someone. A proposal? Don't make excuses for yourself. At that moment, you were clearly just trying to make me look bad to amuse your ex. Do you think I'm stupid? Besides, the ones you should apologize to are my patients. They worked hard to get the chance for surgery, and only I and a 96-year-old professor can perform this specialized operation. Now that my hand is useless, who can help them? Alexander opened his mouth in vain, feeling guilty and unable to speak after the lie was exposed. The quiet hospital room was left with just me. The marks on the ceiling, caused by melting snow, slowly spread, just like my future, which is confused and directionless. Closing my eyes, the eager faces of patients flashed by quickly. How should I explain this to them? Alexander, this isn't your fault, accidents are unpredictable. Evelyn is still a young girl, so she needs some comforting. She'll understand when she's ready. I suddenly opened my eyes upon hearing a sound. Jocelyn was standing outside the hospital room comforting Alexander. Perhaps this is the reason I don't like getting close to anyone. Can I really vent my anger on innocent people just because he's my boyfriend? Similarly, I won't let anyone bully me. I almost thought I was hallucinating. What was Jocelyn saying? Alexander let out a heavy sigh and said in a hoarse voice, "You're right, I understand what you mean. It's all my fault anyway, I love her, and I can't be as clear-headed and rational as you. You care about Evelyn too, right? You came to the ward to keep her company. I thank you on behalf of Evelyn, you should go back and rest now." Through the gaps in the blinds, I vaguely saw Jocelyn standing in front of Alexander. Alexander helplessly rubbed his face, and finally leaned on Jocelyn with a devout and gentle demeanor. I expressionlessly picked up the phone. "Hello, is this 911? I was maliciously injured by a male colleague, and I suspect they are trying to commit murder. I met Alexander in college. If there is anything about him that could move me, sincerity is probably the only killer move. He is completely devoted to me, accommodating me unconditionally, like a silly and clumsy little dog that loves to wag its tail wildly for its owner. I don't need to doubt his sincerity, I just need to slowly teach him how to love and how to get along. But I don't want to raise a boy anymore. He makes me feel sick." My parents rushed to the police station, and after understanding the situation, they fully supported my decision. What kind of joke could make someone unhesitatingly throw their girlfriend over their shoulder? He ruined my future. He even had the audacity to tell my parents afterward. I accidentally slipped in the hospital and injured my arm. In the face of all my accusations, Alexander did not refute a single word, accepting any punishment, and in the end, it was the hospital director and chief who stepped in to mediate, hoping to prevent the situation from escalating. Alexander will face indefinite suspension, with lawyers negotiating compensation, just hoping to avoid prison and prevent a negative image for the hospital. Moreover, my 96-year-old mentor is still in the hospital in a coma, and everyone hopes that things won't escalate and disturb the old man. Compensation is fine, so let him get the money ready. The hospital quickly arranged for my surgery, allowing me to focus on healing my right hand without worrying about anything else. But on the first day of my hospitalization, the nurses' station started arguing about overtime. The surgery department is short 2 doctors, so all the schedules and surgeries have to be changed, and the workload has increased too much. Jocelyn, passing by during the rounds, stopped at the nurses' station and coldly said, "Complaining is useless. If you nurses are tired, don't you think the doctors are tired too?" It was clearly just an accident. It was Dr. Evelyn throwing a tantrum that blew things out of proportion, causing her boyfriend to be suspended as well. You can't blame anyone else. Don't mind me being blunt, I'm just speaking the truth. The people at the nurses' station were stunned. Not being present at the scene, unaware of the full picture, and with Jocelyn being the cold goddess who has never been fond of gossip, her words are naturally convincing. Jocelyn turned to leave, and I quickly rushed up to grab her wrist. "Jocelyn, just say it plainly. What do you mean by me making a big deal out of this? Look clearly, I am the one who was hurt. If it were you, and your boyfriend threw you down for no reason, causing your arm to fracture so you can no longer hold a scalpel, and then he argued that it was just a joke, an accident. Wouldn't you be angry? Wouldn't you seek accountability? The nurse's expressions changed. I pulled out a group photo and placed it on the table. At that time, Jocelyn was right there. When Alexander threw me down, you were smiling so brightly. What were you thinking? Were you really that happy? Jocelyn's body swayed slightly, her pearly teeth biting down on her lower lip, and the color gradually drained from her face. Just as she was about to speak, a strong force suddenly pushed me aside from behind, and Alexander stood between us, protecting Jocelyn. Evelyn, Jocelyn doesn't understand the scheming between women, this whole thing is my fault. It was clearly Jocelyn who said that first, everyone heard it. The young nurse suddenly spoke up, honestly sharing her opinion. Jocelyn's face was as pale as frost, her gaze like shattered jade, fragile and heart-wrenching. Suddenly, she coldly turned around, holding the documents. What do you all think? Feel free, I don't care about others' opinions. Your smile doesn't owe anything to anyone. If you felt happy at the time, then smile. What's wrong with that? Alexander stubbornly blocked Jocelyn, then softened his gaze and walked in front of me, whispering, Evelyn, apologize to Jocelyn, it's too tense now, how can we work together in the future? Besides, Jocelyn has taken on work for both of us, she's already very tired, it's not easy for her. As soon as these words were spoken, the people around gasped in shock. I grabbed the disinfectant alcohol from the table, twisted off the cap, and poured it directly over Alexander's head, saying, look at the dirty things in your brain, let me disinfect you. Isn't it funny that I should apologize to Jocelyn? There are some things I don't want to say, but she took over my work. Does she have that capability? What's with the act of being a martyr and enduring humiliation? I became a doctor to treat and save people, I don't need to watch her face. And what's with her saying it's too awkward to work together? Everyone else isn't laughing, only she's grinning with her big teeth, she deserves to be scolded, and she's the one laughing the loudest. Should I pick a good day to scold her? The entire corridor of the ward was silent, many people were stunned by my actions, even the patients' families gathered by the door to watch the commotion. Jocelyn was half leaning against the wall, her expression revealing confusion and helplessness, her body swaying as if she would fall to the ground at any moment. An unaware male patient wanted to help Jocelyn, slowly maneuvering his wheelchair closer. I suddenly smiled slyly and said, everyone help me analyze this, 2 girls, both in the key hospital's surgery department, and here I am, young yet able to perform professional surgeries. Am I blocking someone's path? A word awakened the dreamer, everyone's gaze changed, as if Jocelyn's two-faced nature had suddenly found a reasonable explanation. Jocelyn gave a bitter smile and lowered her gaze in desolation. Alexander clenched his fists and suddenly shouted at me, enough, Evelyn. Do you really need to target Jocelyn like this? How could she be that kind of person? Don't drag her into our issues. No wonder she is laughing so happily, it turns out she is jealous of Dr. Evelyn. That makes sense, I didn't expect Jocelyn to be this kind of person. The situation became increasingly tense, even the head nurse and the director were alarmed. Security was stopping everyone from filming, and amidst the chaos, the male patient in the wheelchair looked at me in confusion and asked, Dr. Evelyn? What do you mean your hand is hurt? His name is Benjamin, he is my patient and has been actively cooperating with the treatment. He was originally scheduled for surgery next week. Only Professor Bill understands my illness after running across the country, he said his apprentice Evelyn can save me. I can have the surgery soon, what does that mean? Can't you cure my illness? In that instant, the 3 of us were stunned. The unbreakable boundary in my heart filled me with guilt. Alexander was the first to bow and apologize to the patient, and I also lowered my head to apologize and explain. With red eyes, Jocelyn leaned close to the wheelchair and gently comforted for the first time in her life, don't worry, let me take a look at your medical records, I will definitely cure your illness. Benjamin's eyes were red with anger as he pushed Jocelyn away, who do you think you are? Professor Bill said only Evelyn can save me. Do you have that ability? Jocelyn stared blankly at him, her pride shattered in an instant, unable to utter a word in rebuttal. She bit her nearly colorless lips and, under the gaze of the crowd, gathered her things and left. Alexander immediately went after her. I am studying a rare spinal disease that manifests in adulthood, where patients essentially rely on wheelchairs for life, suffering unbearable pain. Because it is spinal surgery, it requires extremely precise operations and theoretical knowledge, with high risks and great difficulty. Patients come to me with their last glimmer of hope to give it a try. I have lost my future and prospects. Those patients who miss their treatment opportunities may truly have no chance left. No one suffers more than they do. The hospital also understands the seriousness of this matter. There was no pursuit of my responsibility in the argument, and they issued another disciplinary action to the suspended Alexander and a warning to Jocelyn. My ward has also been upgraded to a single room. Jocelyn seemed to be holding her breath, determined to cure Benjamin. She applied to the director to take over the patient, checking the ward 3 times a day to analyze the progress of his condition, prescribing many medications to relieve his pain and inflammation, and promised that he would have surgery next week. Several times I was afraid something would happen and wanted to go eavesdrop, but Jocelyn kept me at bay. Don't act recklessly, you have no experience in this area. Stick to the medication I prescribed before, and we'll see once my right hand recovers. Jocelyn's eyes were faint, her expression as cold as a snow lotus atop a high mountain. Evelyn, I am also a disciple of Professor Bill, my abilities are no less than yours. Are you worried that I will steal your thunder? I felt a chill run down my spine. Even the nurses seemed uncertain. They secretly told me that the medication Jocelyn prescribed was completely ineffective. Benjamin was quite optimistic when he first entered the hospital, but now he can't sleep at night from the pain, banging his head against the wall, and during the day, he loses his temper, shouting that he doesn't want to live anymore. He seems like a different person. I immediately messaged the director, who, based on experience, first contacted the psychiatric evaluation. After worrying for a few days, I received a private message on my social media account, sent at 3 in the morning. Evelyn, can I make a wish? I have an incurable disease, and I want to see something happy. I privately run a comedy account, filming funny videos each episode, with content sourced from private message submissions, and all the proceeds are donated. However, I only accept submissions from patients with terminal illnesses, serious diseases, or those who have lost hope, using another way to make them happy. I understand the rules, I will show you my medical records. It's a rare disease, can you understand it? I recognized at a glance that it was Benjamin's medical record. I ordered glow sticks and a frog costume from a nearby supermarket based on his submission, had them delivered to the hospital, and reminded him not to lose heart, that he would get better. I would post the video as soon as I finished making it today. About 2 hours later, there was a knock on the ward door. Thank you for bringing the delivery, the hospital doesn't allow patients to go downstairs. When I looked up, I was stunned to see Alexander. He was holding a thermos and a lunchbox, casually placing a large bag of deliveries on the table, and frowned as he advised me, "Are you filming another funny video? How much can you earn from making videos? You're sick and still doing this? Evelyn, sometimes I really don't understand you. Why do girls deliberately make themselves look ugly and cheap? Can't you learn to be a bit more graceful and elegant? Cheap? So this is how Alexander has always viewed me. Compared to his dignified and elegant ex, Jocelyn, I am indeed quite cheap. So it's fine to joke about shoulder throws, I embarrass myself, and his ex gets a good laugh. Do you need something? I forgot, the lawyer talks are almost done, are you here to pay me? My sharp words deeply hurt Alexander. His shoulders slumped, and with a sigh, he took out his bank card and handed it to me with trembling hands, saying, "Can you please drink the soup my mom made first? It's good for your health." I took the bank card and put it in my pocket, carrying the delivery bag and leaving without looking back. How much money is in this bank card? Have you had it notarized by a lawyer? I won't accept installment payments, you'd better compensate me in full at once. I found a spot in the stairwell, put on the frog costume, and started recording Queen Card. Halfway through, I suddenly heard the voices of Jocelyn and Alexander coming from behind the security door. Jocelyn's cold voice was particularly clear. To be honest, Alexander, that is all your savings for getting married and buying a house. I don't recommend you empty your pockets. Besides, you didn't do anything wrong in the first place. Jocelyn, I understand. I actually don't care about this money, it's all going to be spent on Evelyn anyway. It was originally meant to be her betrothal gift and the money for the new house. I felt my fists clench. Just as I was about to rush out, I saw Jocelyn looking down with a faint smile. Her bright smile left Alexander mesmerized. I can't understand you all. Clearly, you have hands and feet, and you chose to get married, so why do you need your partner to give you a bride price and buy you a house? It makes it seem like you've sold yourself for a price. I really look down on girls like that, haha. I understand, there are too few women in the world like you who are awake and independent, you deserve. Before I could finish my sentence, I slammed the safety door open and rushed out, giving Alexander a hard punch. You really are like a clogged drain, just spewing nonsense. It makes me sick to hear it. Anyway, wearing the frog costume allows me to go crazy at will. I kicked Jocelyn in the face, and there were garlic bulbs on the windowsill that the patient's family had grown. I grabbed one and stuffed it directly into her mouth. Jocelyn's slender body trembled uncontrollably, and broken tears rolled down one by one. While she was sobbing, I headbutted Alexander and fled at high speed. Just as I took a step, an unusual shadow quickly swept past the window and crashed down to the first floor like a bomb. With a loud bang, everyone froze once they realized what it was. Benjamin climbed to the rooftop while in the bathroom and jumped from the 16th floor of the hospital building, leaving behind a line of text, "I am in too much pain, I cannot be cured." It was determined that he had a very serious mental illness. I forgot how I followed everyone down to the first floor. My colleagues didn't recognize me in this frog costume and pushed me to the edge of the crowd. The last private message from Benjamin in my phone read, "Thank you, but I have no hope left." Those black and white words gradually blurred by tears. For the first time in my life, I felt suffocated and powerless. It was truly terrible. A heart-wrenching scream from Alexander echoed through the crowd. Jocelyn was the first to jump onto the rescue bed, her stunning face smeared with blood, her long hair gently lifted by the breeze, her whole being shattered and desolate. She trembled as she reached to feel Benjamin's pulse. The moment her fingertips made contact, her frail body suddenly went limp and fell backward, like a light feather drifting into the crowd, easily crushable with a slight force. "Save this one first, Jocelyn won't be able to help without causing more chaos. Get her out of here," the head nurse shouted furiously. Alexander immediately rushed over to hug Jocelyn, picking her up horizontally and running towards the emergency room. On the way, I stopped him. "Evelyn, stop it, Jocelyn's situation is very dangerous." I slapped Alexander expressionlessly. He was stunned. I took off my gloves and firmly grasped his chin. "I just want to tell you, this is the first life you indirectly caused to be lost, and you will pay the price. Benjamin is dead." Jocelyn had a high fever and rested for half a month before returning to the hospital, looking utterly haggard. On the day I was discharged, I rushed into the office to confront the director and demand back my patients. The director was taken aback for a moment, but before he could speak, Jocelyn intervened, saying, "There's no need for that. Given Dr. Evelyn's current condition, she can't possibly treat the patients." I replied without hesitation, "If I can't do it, can you?" Jocelyn swayed slightly, and the color drained from her small face. At that moment, a male colleague stood up to speak for Jocelyn. "Dr. Evelyn, you shouldn't say that. Jocelyn has done her best, each has their own expertise, and she may not be any less capable than you. Benjamin's mental illness was an accident. He was not present at the scene and did not know the full story. He was moved by Jocelyn's pitiful appearance and felt a pang of sympathy." I was about to speak when the security called to say that Benjamin's family was outside the hospital holding a banner, demanding the director to handle it. The director was furious. "This is outrageous. He already had a mental illness, and the hospital is not responsible." At that moment, a female colleague stood up, her face showing difficulty as she said, "I saw them at work, they were demanding an explanation from Dr. Jocelyn." At that time, the patient fell from the building, and Jocelyn rushed to the bedside but did nothing for emergency care. They are fixated on this point, believing that if Jocelyn had done something, the person wouldn't have died. Everyone in the room was stunned. The male colleague who had spoken up for Jocelyn earlier dropped his pen with a thud on the floor. In fact, none of us know whether Benjamin still had a pulse during those few minutes he was sent to the emergency room. Only Jocelyn knows. The accusations from Benjamin's family left her nowhere to hide. Her slender figure stood upright in the crowd like a proud bamboo, cold and ethereal, as if she were completely out of place amidst all the wailing and cries of despair. A rotten egg smashed against Jocelyn's face, the egg yolk mingling with tears rolling down her cheeks. She smiled gently, broken yet hopeless. Alexander stood in the crowd witnessing everything, his heart aching beyond measure. But like all the other heartbroken male colleagues, he dared not step forward to protect Jocelyn. In the end, it was the hospital that took this group of people away. Just before they left, a little girl among the family members recognized me, picked a wildflower from the lawn, and handed it to me, saying, "Thank you, Dr. Evelyn, for helping my dad. I hope you recover soon." I felt very sorry for the accident and squatted down to chat with her for a while. Soon after, Alexander, with a gloomy expression, blocked my way. His eyes were red, and after a while, he quietly asked me, "Do you know Benjamin's family?" "Nonsense, I am Benjamin's attending physician." Alexander chased after me a few steps, carefully tugging at the corner of my clothes. "Evelyn, is today your arrangement to take revenge on Jocelyn? If so, I beg you not to make things difficult for her, a woman. This whole thing is my fault, don't involve others in our matters." I was stunned for a few seconds, then I stood on my tiptoes and grabbed Alexander's collar, pulling him toward the crowd. "How could I forget? You are the real culprit, and you can't escape." Stumbling into the crowd, I patted the middle-aged man leading the family, who seemed to be Benjamin's older brother. I said to him, "Actually, Benjamin is about to have surgery, but due to an accident, I can no longer hold a scalpel." As I spoke, I pointed at Alexander. "It's not an accident, I was deliberately harmed. It was him, he ruined my right hand just to make Dr. Jocelyn laugh, preventing me from operating on your brother. I think if you have grievances, you should go after Dr. Alexander." In an instant, the color drained from Alexander's face. I heard that Alexander was ambushed in the underground parking lot and had 4 ribs broken. The bad guys bought him a coffin and locked him inside for an entire night. A photo of Jocelyn was nailed to the coffin, with big red letters saying, "Cheap men and women." However, there were no surveillance cameras or fingerprints left at the scene, and there were no follow-ups. He was afraid of losing face and specifically went to another hospital for treatment, but unexpectedly, the incident was reported as a supernatural news story and quickly became known to everyone. The entire surgical department was afraid of getting involved again and silently isolated Jocelyn. Male colleagues avoided her whenever they saw her. I am afraid of encountering another Benjamin, so I spent the night organizing the few patients I have. Among this group of rare disease patients, only Benjamin is in an acute condition. The other 4 are stable and have a chance of avoiding surgery and relying on lifelong medication. I hesitated when my gaze fell on the name Alan. I have known him for a year. His family is well off and owns a publicly listed company, but he has a gloomy and taciturn personality, and every time he comes to the hospital, he is reluctant to say more than a few words. He and Benjamin are simply 2 extremes. Counting the days, Alan's medication is almost finished, so I took the initiative to contact him to set a time, and I also told him about my recent accident. A long time later, he replied to me with a message, "Is being a doctor as hard as it is for you?" I didn't know where to start, so I had to arrange to meet him to talk. On the day we met, I had just enough time, so I first went to the hospital to visit the old professor. I hadn't dared to visit before because my right hand was in a cast. It had been since last summer since we last met. When I arrived, the professor had just gone for an examination, and the ward was filled with various bouquets and fruit baskets, all sent by younger generations. Professor Bill is truly esteemed, there are visitors every day, and this morning, a Dr. Alexander came by. The nurse and I chatted for a bit, and when I returned to the ward with the washed fruit, I happened to run into Alexander sitting in front of the professor's bed talking. But he has no connection with the professor, right? To be honest, Professor Bill, have you ever realized how biased you are? Jocelyn is stronger than Evelyn in both ability and experience, she just has a too naive mindset. She doesn't understand the twists and turns of interpersonal relationships, and she isn't as smooth-tongued as Evelyn, who knows how to please people. Don't blame me for being blunt, I wanted to say this back then. Why would you ignore a gem like Jocelyn and choose to carve a stone like Evelyn instead? But now it seems that Evelyn's right hand is useless. Is this not a punishment from heaven for your earlier blindness in discarding a good seed? My mind went blank with a bang, and I thought I must have misheard. What guts does Alexander have to say that in front of Professor Bill? The tone and wording don't sound like something a fool could come up with. It's Jocelyn stirring things up from behind the scenes. Jocelyn has always played the victim to make men stand up for her. I pushed the door open forcefully, and Professor Bill, his face flushed, pointed at me, his chest heaving, and his rapid breathing triggered the surveillance alarm. Doctors and nurses quickly rushed in for emergency aid. As I was escorted out of the ward, I grabbed a vase and smashed it over Alexander's head. Are you sick? Have you lost your mind? The splintered fragments cut Alexander's face, fine droplets of blood falling down, mingling with his bitter smile. I am crazy. Loving you has become an instinct for me, but I cannot ignore Jocelyn. Who has seen the grievances and hardships she has endured over the years? If I don't speak up for her, she will go mad. For the first time, I found this foolish man utterly disgusting, more so than any of the silly things he had done. We waited outside the hospital room until evening, only to receive a death notice. When the family was sorting through the belongings, they found an unsent text message, written by Professor Bill in his final moments. "Do not worry about the long road ahead, the wind will guide you. Be strong, be confident." I answered Alan's call in tears. He was stunned for a few seconds and hoarsely said, "If you need anything, you can contact this person." Immediately, he sent me the business card of a private lawyer. He is a nationally renowned legal giant. The sound of sobbing came from the hospital room as Alexander and the younger family members knelt by Professor Bill's bedside to bid farewell. Their pretentious display was unbearable for me. Did he think that just because there were no cameras in the room, he wouldn't have to take responsibility for what he said? I trembled as I dialed the lawyer's number. Since Professor Bill was dead, I had nothing left to worry about. Our grievances couldn't be resolved privately, old and new grudges would be settled together, and no one would escape. Those who intentionally cause serious harm may face a sentence of more than 3 years. If the evidence from the conversation in the hospital is complete, Alexander will also face murder charges, and the lawyer will do their best to pursue my demands in court. My meeting with Alan was postponed for a week. It was difficult for both sides to find a suitable time. When we finally met, I realized he was in such a serious condition that he needed a wheelchair. "Dr. Evelyn, what do you mean you can't perform the surgery? Is your right hand never going to get better?" Accompanying Alan was a young girl, with a high ponytail and wearing jeans, looking just barely an adult. Alan's eyes were calm, as if he had long accepted the fact that his rare disease was incurable, rumored to be hereditary in his family. The young girl kept her head down and said nothing, and Alan sighed as he pinched her cheek, trying to comfort her, as if all his tenderness and patience were given to her alone. It is said that Alan wanted her to study abroad, but she secretly applied to medical school without telling him, and she was the top of her entire major. A thought crossed my mind, and I suddenly remembered Professor Bill's parting words, leaving behind the girl's information and contact details. "Her name is Bonnie. That night she sent me a lot of messages. Evelyn, I know you are the hidden big shot at the medical university. When I enrolled, the seniors recommended Jocelyn, but I've looked at her resume, and she really doesn't measure up in any aspect except for her looks. You need to work hard." The dark clouds that loomed over my heart finally saw a ray of sunshine as Bonnie's gentle breeze passed by. Soon after, I received news from the lawyer. He said the materials had been organized and submitted to the court, but Alexander had a small accident and was hospitalized. Alexander suddenly lost sensation in his lower limbs while driving, resulting in an accident. After being sent to the hospital for treatment, no cause could be found. It was the director who, passing by, had a flash of insight and checked a few specific indicators, leading to special examinations that resulted in a conclusion. He was diagnosed with a rare disease, entering the acute phase, suffering unbearable pain. If there is such a thing as cause and effect in this world, Alexander must have tasted the fruits of retribution. The minuscule probability of this rare disease hit him precisely. And the only doctor in the country researching this disease, the one who could save him, is me. But my right hand is already useless, and I will never be able to hold a scalpel again. From the moment he threw Jocelyn over his shoulder to please her, he had thrown away his life and all hope of healing. After Alexander fell ill, he never reached out to me again. One day, I received a package containing a large sum of money from his bank account. He had sent me all his savings. This illness, if not treated during its acute phase, can really be fatal. So, between signing for the package and showing kindness to save a life, I chose to urge him to appear in court as soon as possible and act according to the law. The lawsuit process was long. I waited from winter to spring, and from spring to summer, finally receiving the court hearing notice on the day I moved out of the outpatient building. My right hand is not suited for staying on the front lines of clinical work, and just at that time, Professor Bill had a friend who is the deputy director of a research institute, who recently extended an olive branch to me. He is willing to open a separate research lab for me, where I will specialize in researching rare spinal diseases. This was something Professor Bill had been promoting during his lifetime, and now I am completing it. In a way, it can be considered a blessing in disguise. The day I left was also the day Jocelyn resigned. In the past 6 months, she has frequently made mistakes during surgeries, accumulating too many complaints. I heard that she has recently become close to a wealthy male patient and is even wearing a ring. But that man is married. Compared to the scene 6 months ago when everyone flocked to her, Now no one cares whether she comes or goes, what photos she takes, or whether she smiles. A male colleague pointed at her and coldly remarked, "She deliberately wears those kinds of clothes, lets her hair down, and puts on heavy makeup to pose. I used to think she was a pure and elegant fairy, but now I understand, she is just a cheap woman." As I stepped out of the hospital door, Jocelyn chuckled softly behind me. "Evelyn, you've enjoyed such success for so many years, but in the end, you're leaving just like me. Who is really more noble? I used to envy you, to be jealous of you. But now, haha, good luck to you." After saying this, she deliberately revealed her right hand adorned with a diamond ring, her slender fingers brushing through her hair, her gaze dreamy and enchanting. Soon, a luxury car stopped in front of her, and the man greedily took her hand. I turned and headed to the bus station. Having trained under the same master and worked together for several years, from now on our lives would go in opposite directions. Alexander unexpectedly passed away before the trial. I heard that while hospitalized, I happened to sleep in the same bed where Benjamin once slept, and when I got up, I stepped into thin air, rolling down from the 13th floor in the wheelchair and dying on the spot. It was only after the fact that I learned it was not an accident. Before the incident, he had been chatting all night with Jocelyn, trying to help her move on from her heartbreak. It turned out Jocelyn was pregnant. But that man, who had a wife, refused to take responsibility, and in the end, she received nothing, even being dragged into the street by the legal wife and having the pregnancy forcibly terminated, exposed and vulnerable. At first, Alexander advised her that she loved the wrong person and deserved better. Later, upon discovering that she had intruded into someone else's marriage, he began to praise her as being more worthy of a man's affection than the legitimate wife. In the end, he completely understood that Jocelyn was a money-loving woman, and not the one he loved 7 years ago. What a foolish and pitiful man. Alexander had signed a body donation agreement before his death, and it just so happened that he was to donate to the research institute where I work. It seemed to be a surprise he prepared for me right after our argument. "My love for you is unwavering until death. I am willing to give everything for you, to protect you for all eternity." The day I received the news made me feel so sick that I couldn't eat. But the heavens do not fulfill human wishes. The transport vehicle broke down on the cross-sea highway. When the driver contacted a tow truck at the roadside, the car, which was originally in gear with the handbrake on, suddenly tilted to the left, plunging Alexander into the sea for 3 seconds, disappearing without a trace. His family spent money trying to recover him for half a month but found nothing. The court ultimately ruled that the driver bore no responsibility. When I casually mentioned this matter while visiting the professor's wife, the old lady lit a stick of incense for Professor Bill and sighed, "It's quite reasonable, it's all retribution." Bonnie joined my research lab in her junior year. She stood out with the highest score among over 4,000 applicants from 5 medical schools and officially began studying the professional notes I had from my own time. Her artistic talent is better than mine, her memory and deconstruction of 3-dimensional space are very quick, which is a great benefit for the precise operations required in spinal surgery. I asked her if she originally planned to go abroad to study art, and changed to studying medicine to save Alan. Bonnie looked at the surgical recording while finishing the ribs in her bowl and calmly asked me, "Master, do I look like the kind of person who loves a delicate wife?" Not at all. She wiped her mouth and took out a wedding invitation from her bag, handing it to me. "I love him, but he is not my whole life. Alan will only be my lover, overshadowed by a certain ray of my light." "Wow, that aunt doesn't have hands, she's a monster," came the shouts of a few children from outside the lab window. Today is family open day, and many colleagues brought their children to visit. I turned to look in the direction of the voice and found that the person outside the window was Jocelyn. She had lost her right hand. It had been years since I last saw her, and she seemed to have aged over a decade. Her dry, yellowing hair hung loosely, her face heavily made up, with cheap foundation sitting on her parched skin, desperately exuding a charm that belonged to a married woman. She married a security guard from the research institute. That man is quite fierce. At this moment, a parent stepped forward to remind them, "You can't be so rude. Auntie's hand is just sick, and she is very sad. How can you laugh at her? Quickly apologize to Auntie." A group of giggling children quickly stood at attention and obediently apologized to Jocelyn. How funny. A truth that even children understand, yet she does not. Back then, she laughed so brilliantly. Jocelyn suddenly let out a soft moan, grabbing a child's arm. "Are you hurt? Let Auntie take a look, Auntie is also a surgeon." As soon as he finished speaking, her husband stepped out of the crowd, blushing, and urged her to leave. You can't even treat your own illness, how can you treat a child? Just go. I stood outside the crowd, watching Jocelyn from a distance, while Bonnie called me back to check the experiment results. The same crossroads. The same divergence. Everything is for the best arrangement.